Hi, Mayor,
Welcome.
Council, thank you for allowing me to speak. Some of you know me, but for those who don't, I'm Henry Yu. I'm a historian at UBC. I research Chinese Canadian and Canadian history as well as migration history with a particular particular interest in the role of heritage and historical memory in community building. So my scholarly research. I've served for the last 2 years as the co-chair of the province of British Columbia's Bipartisan Legacy Initiatives Advisory Council following the 2014 provincial apology for historical anti-Chinese discrimination, a process that led to the designation of Chinatown as a provincial heritage site of significance in 2016, so that all 3 levels of government now recognize the importance of Vancouver's Chinatown as a heritage site. I also serve on the advisory group for the examination of historical discrimination against Chinese peoples for the city of Vancouver, process which is having open houses right now, as many of you know. I 12 years ago served on the advisory committee for the original historical study of society buildings in Chinatown. That was part of the lead up to the Chinatown vision, as well as of taking part. I go into this detail just to say that I come here as a private citizen. I was born in Vancouver in 1967, as well as a scholar whose research is on heritage and in particular on Chinatown, and many of my students are working in various capacities in Chinatown. I've never lived in Chinatown myself, but my parents did, my grandfather did. So it's a place dear to my heart. It's one of the reasons why I'm a community volunteer for so long in the place. It remains an enduring touchstone for who we are, who we have been, and I hope who we will be in Vancouver. I'm 50, so you can figure if you're older or younger than me, but I've lived for a third of all of Canada's history. If you think of it that way, I was born in 1967. For the first 2/3 of Canada's history, right, it's a very different place. 1967, we finally removed racial preference from our immigration policy, the year I was born. In 1947, we finally allowed Chinese to vote. Up until that moment, all 3 levels of government used the power of the state to make Chinese second-class citizens. There were places they could not buy land, they could not get city contracts. They could not live in certain neighborhoods. You could not, someone was telling me all their memories of movies when they were young, it seemed like they were looking down on the movie. It's because they were only allowed to watch from the balcony in a movie theater. That history is our history. Chinatown was a product of that history, and it reminds us, as no other place can, of who we are. If we forget that history, if we erase it in our admirable aspirations to become a better society, we are in fact doing the opposite. We cannot know how far we have come unless we know from where we began. I think of people like Fun Hsin Wong, like Nellie Yip, recently both honored with federal plaques. Roy Ma and other Chinese Canadian vets who fought for Canada, even as they were treated as second-class citizens. They knew that a society is not just if there is not justice for all, but only for some. And so they have made us a better society for all of us, not just for themselves. They weren't doing selfishly, this is just for Chinese, just for ourselves. We're a better society because of their struggles. Chinatown is a touchstone for that history. If you lose that, how are you going to storytell? How are you going to tell future generations the dark past that we have overcome? I've seen a letter supporting the rezoning of 105 Keefer called those who opposed it a vocal minority. Others have dismissed the youthful energy of opponents as somehow naive or unreasonable. Perhaps those who ask for justice, to plead with others to do the right thing, will always sound too vocal and unreasonable. But I would rather stand with those who speak a truth that will last, those who are remembered for being on the right side of history. That's where we are right now, a moment that is pivotal. Hundreds of people have signed up to speak to you. It's your decision to make. I'm reminded as a historian the parallels between this moment and the freeway fight 50 years ago. I wasn't around. And none of you look old enough to have been around either, or maybe you were kids. But the freeway fight defined this city. It's made it the way it is right now.
So you're over your time. If you could wrap up in a sentence.
I want to just make 3 quick points to put into this historical.
You're over 5 already, so respecting everyone.
We owe Chinatown because the freeway stopped the development of the city as a city that would empty out its downtown. So we have high density, it's a livable city. That's one. This is about the future, not the past. We're not trying to freeze Chinatown. We're trying to keep it as a touchstone. The third and the final point I'll make is sometimes doing nothing is the best. The developer wants to make a rezoning change. On this one, doing nothing is just to say no. And that may be the best for it. I'm happy to share any expertise that I've gained in looking at cities all around the world and their historical development, as well as their heritage development practices and what is the best in UNESCO practices and intangible heritage characteristics. But I wanted to make that personal.
Great. Thanks. You got questions from Councillor Carr?